Hello, hello, hello. I'm going to be doing a live with Wes Talon, and I'm just going to wait for him to jump on, and we'll have a conversation and share some organically produced gems with you all. Let's see. Oh, there we go.
Hey, organically produced gems coming out of where? I don't know yet, but
Yeah. So, everybody, welcome Wes Talon, aka the Obsidian Blade on IG. Yeah, we did a live, I think it was, I don't know, months ago on your page, and we figured now would be a good time to pop back in and have another conversation and see what happens.
exactly. I've been admiring all the things that you do, and just I'm like I said in our conversation, like, what has Rowan deconstructed lately? Because I feel like you're just you are a blade master as well, and you're just cutting through things left and right. I'm like, oh. Well, so that's kind of actually one of the places I wanted to start in with you. And also I've been doing, like I shared with you, I've been doing a lot of research on some interesting topics about myth and storytelling and how that's intrinsic to our current transformation and our power, and exposing kind of the mechanics of myth and storytelling, um, in regards to, yeah, the narratives we're busting and the power that we're reclaiming. So
I want to know more about that.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know that we can just skip right over that and go into something else. Maybe we start with that. You could share a bit about what you're thinking as far as myths and how and deconstructing those and how it relates to what's happening now.
Yeah, this is really, yeah, I have a lot of notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read through it because I feel like they're all stacked upon one another.
Sure.
But feel free to jump in and be like, say, hold or question, or like, let's, talk about it. Um, So some of this work is coming from the author Seth Godin, from his book called The Icarus Deception.
Okay.
And it's a great book on just artistic process. Um, and it's just funny, you notice how, like, you get on a certain track and then you start attracting other information from all these other sources. And you're like, well, I guess this is what I need to know right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm finding this angle about myth is really, I think, crucial to what we're all doing together right now, um, busting myths and creating new myths. So myths are ancient truths about what we're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And the deities that we created in stories are actually just ourselves projected outwardly. They are the best and the worst of what we're capable of. And we created them to never forget our potential. Where we go wrong with myth is when we begin to worship the myths, thus denying the very power in us they were designed to uphold and remind us of and install.
Mm. Repeat that
Yeah.
sentence one more time.
They are the best and the worst of what we are capable of, and we created them to never forget our potential. Where we go wrong is when we worship them, thus denying the very power in us they were designed to uphold, reinstall, or install.
Mm. I get curious just even as you're talking about this,
Yeah.
like who because it's what's interesting too that we're talking about this because just this
Mm.
morning I was doing the whole whale post and I was
Cool.
reading a little bit into lore and different stories
Mm.
as it relates to these different cultures and animals and the differences and similarities, and it makes me curious, like what are the true origins of these myths and where are they coming from and how
Right.
do they, like, how are different cultures maybe representing different elements of that myth and
Mm.
why, and
Mhm.
where did they really come from, and
Yeah.
yeah, all of those.
Exactly. I mean, and that's part of the discovery. Like, which myths did we create? Which myths come from other cultures, and which myths come from the predator or inception?
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
And what this is all getting to, which I'll describe, is again the mechanics of how we're designed. In the end, as creators, we're nothing but storytellers. We're nothing but what we focus upon and thus make alive. So myth becomes the genetic code, the DNA code, and the computer code to what we make alive. So checking our myths is what we're doing. Like when I see you cutting apart reality, I think I see you cutting apart myth.
Wow, yeah. I never would have really worded it that way or even maybe thought of it in that context, but I think that's so interesting. It just adds a whole other layer to things. And I love what you said too about the predator and those myths and maybe where those lies or myths, because myths doesn't have to mean lie, but sometimes it could mean lie.
Right.
And where those lies might be living in our bodies or living in our belief systems or the way that we view things. But I also love what you were saying about we are inherent storytellers.
Yeah.
And that, one thing I noticed, or that I notice in general with working one-on-one with people in like a therapeutic context, is that there's a certain percentage of people who come in who are very much so in the mental story of their life and of everything that's happened to them. And there's this really, I think, important phase in our transformation and evolution where we kind of reconnect with the story of our life in a way that, like, I think a lot of us became very disconnected or fragmented from our actual story, or there's emotional pieces that are locked out. We might have the memory, but we might not have the emotional connection, or we might not have the memory, but we might have the emotional connection. And so we start to bring these pieces in. And then I think the next step beyond that is moving even beyond the stories that our past really is and integrating it in a way that it informs like what we're doing in the world and what's different and what we're creating essentially. So by deconstructing our own past or own story, and even kind of moving it out of just like a movie picture in our mind and into our actual bodies in a way that informs how we move and how we speak, is kind of the next stage. Like it's like first we kind of have to become re-intimate with the origins of us, whatever that looks like for people. I think there's a lot of multidimensionality that could be housed within that, coming back to our own story. I mean, for some people that goes back beyond this lifetime and they are beyond even just this vessel, and bringing that story into the body as well, but making it alive, like you said, from something that's sort of just like flat and maybe defines us into something that we've deconstructed, understood, integrated, and then we use that moving forward.
Exactly. The interesting word too. I love that, and I know that's part of probably your somatic therapy is the locked out. That's a fascinating trip I think all of us are going through, is that we have these memories of our power and our truth or our passion and potential, and yet we're locked out of those. That's a really interesting thing, and I think that's partly the healing of the karma or the genetic code that we were birthed into, which in the end of the day, if we're looking as myth as genetic code, and myth, like you said, maybe myth is a lie, but myth, the way it came to me is myth is always a destination. Myth is a choice of a destination because it's going to lead you somewhere. You believe something, it leads you somewhere. So yeah, where did the myths that we were born into parentally, societally, and genetically, they have led us to destinations, but yet we came in with a spirit that's just like, probably has an agenda, to do what it wants to do and explore. And we're hitting those walls that we were given on all those multiple levels. And the process has been to unlock ourselves from that inheritance that there's wisdom in it for sure. There's wisdom in the healing. There's wisdom in the toxicity and the pain. Absolutely. You know, it gives us, I think, compassion, right, for not just self, but compassion from everybody going through this. But ultimately, we're at this crux where we need to deconstruct every myth that was handed to us, as well as recognize the power of ourselves that's been located in those myths, to no longer disassociate what we were saying about the gods and reclaim that as, wait, we are the authors of these stories. And again, we wrote these stories to remind ourselves, just like I write myself notes because I'm all over the place. I write myself my notes so I can refer back to, I don't have to rethink it. I can just like reignite it, and it's kind of like a bookmark for myself to go back to, rather than feeling like I've got to, for me in my mind, I'm always thinking I've got to reinvent my next level. I'm like, no, you already wrote your next level. Just go look at your notes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love a lot of what you've been sharing about people coming into reclaiming our power, which
Yeah.
may have been locked away in these myths, in a sense of like what role we identify at, like how we identify ourselves too within those stories. Like, do we identify ourselves as the hero? Do we identify ourselves as the victim? That's been perpetrated against. Like, that also has a lot to do with where our power has been locked away from us. Yeah, and I think that's really what a lot of us are doing, is just trying to come back to our power in a social, cultural, global society that feels as though it's really designed to fragment people from their inherent power and wisdom and divinity.
And divinity. And the paradox is, you're never going to gain power because you're already powerful. We're only investing our power in certain returns. Like, which is kind of funny with the rise of cryptocurrency and the rise of the investor. We're all investors. We were born investors, and we get returns on what we invest in. But always we came full. And so really, you're never not in power. You're just applying your power in a way that gets you returns that makes you think you don't have power.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're never going to be more powerful than you are now. You're going to relearn to restore how you're applying that pre-existing power in ways that reflect your power, not your power creating myth and story where you're diminished.
Right. Where others have over.
Yeah, exactly. So you're not waiting for your divinity. You're not waiting for your power. You're awakening to how you've been applying those things and getting certain returns. And that's the Ghostbusters that we're doing right now.
I love that. I feel like that's gonna land or apply to a lot of the people who are gonna see this, including myself. I mean,
So I'll just say, like, so when we pray to certain gods, we're actually praying to aspects of ourselves we wish to invoke or reinstall, to show up and contribute to show up in life and contribute to life the ways our gods can. So again, just ending this distancing that we've been enrolled in. And I'll say it again in a little bit, but what's interesting too about the Mythbusters is that so far we've grown up in a culture, or we're at the tail end of a huge era where it was religion and then government that dictated the collective myth. And that is what we've seen institutionalized religion fall apart beautifully. We've been dismantling a lot of that seeped into the New Age movement, and dismantling that because it wanted to revive itself again. And then we're seeing politics completely have no vision of where we're going. It has no new myth to tell us. And so we're seeing people going like, well, if you're not going to tell us, and we're going to end this waiting for a savior type of thing, then we're going to tell our own myth. Because wait a second. Oh, wait, we've been empowered to tell our own myth the whole time.
Yeah. Well, we were just, I think for a lot of us, we were just at some point going along with whatever that mainstream, whatever's feeding into the mainstream narrative is. And I think as time goes on, at least I pray that this is the case, that more people will start to wake up and empower themselves to create something different. I know I just sent my mom a YouTube link this morning from the Ice Age farmer. I posted it on my story, but it's I can't even fucking remember the title of it right now. But her response to it was, "Oh my God, this world's going to shit every day," and it's very interesting to see those kind of like knee-jerk reactions to seeing the truth of what's, because they have a myth, you know, and it's that they're certainly trying to push.
Yeah.
They have a direction. It's just not the direction that a lot of us would like to be going in. And I kind of saw that for a moment, and I even recognized the way that she responded to that in myself, and kind of this, like this doom and gloom narrative of, oh, it's so, and I think a lot of people can very easily, it's easy to get kind of sucked into that. And then I just told her very, very blatantly, you know, back, I was like, well, that's what we're here to change. And so, yeah, we can see it, but hopefully that vision is what can inform us to create something different. Like, we're not powerless to just watching everything dissolve, like watching it dissolve, and we want it to dissolve. It's a collective calling to see this dissolve. And then it's like, when we're watching it happen, it maybe feels a little bit different than what we imagined, but it has to go like this in some way. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. What sprung up too is like you either get the DVD of whack flicks or the DVD of empowerment flicks. You know, like what you get exactly what you ordered, but there's what people, I think we're seeing like massive collective learned helplessness, and people fighting for their limitations ad nauseum, because that's more comfortable to stick with what they've known, which is to wait for a leader to tell them what to do. But again, that leadership does not exist anymore.
Right. We are the leader.
Yeah. Yeah. We're the leadership. Exactly. This is why empowerment, rising up is like, and it's not to take control of everyone, but it's to offer solutions, of which there are a myriad of different ways we can go.
Solutions. I think that's really what I'm noticing a lot of kind of higher caliber leaders talking about is solution. You know, we can point out very easily what is wrong, but it takes a lot of courage to then come up with an alternative route or solutions for what's wrong. There was one other thing I was going to say about the learned helplessness, or it escaped me. But oh yeah, I was going to say I have a lot of compassion for humanity, because we're basically learning something in this lifetime. I believe that we have the knowledge stored in our being, in our consciousness. But really in this lifetime, this is the first time people have had to try to learn like whole new systems of finance, whole new systems of what would it be like? I mean, just even to start to imagine what another way of doing things and being. It is destabilizing, because it kind of forces us to uproot all these things, and that's something there's no manual. It's like raising a kid or raising a new breed of being that we've never seen before, and we're like, oh, what's this? What kind of food does it need? What kind of climate does it thrive best in? Like, we're trying to figure that out together. I think that's actually a really beautiful thing, because there's a lot of possibility in what we can create right now with that.
There's the beauty of our humanity and the way we're physiologically and psychologically designed is our greatest gift, and our greatest gifts can be hijacked and used against us. And right now, the biggest gift is our ability to form groups. But right now, what you're witnessing through the divide or the attempt to divide us is how belonging is used against people. A lot of people are afraid of not belonging, and therefore they're choosing the subjugation route. Whereas there's a lot of people who know that they can stand up in their individuality and belong to a group that is about, that sovereignty and having sovereignty as a collective connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely, without naming any specifics, I've definitely seen people make choices that I didn't think they would make because of a need to belong. And it literally, when asked, it really does come down to that for some people, of a pressure to appease other people, to make other people to make other people comfortable, to make other people happy.
Right.
And that's a pretty big, even if someone makes a choice like that, whether it's harmful for them or beneficial, let's err on the side of maybe doing something that could be harmful for them, but is to make other people comfortable in some way.
Yep.
That kind of, that karmic energy, or the energy of that, it has to come back up. There will be another opportunity, I think, to rework that and to continue more and more opportunities to continue to reevaluate our personal sovereignty, our own personal connection with source, with God, versus structures that have been adopted, versus like kind of the finite element of belonging to society. Because I think it can be both a really great gift in a way, and it could be a deficit, I guess, to be able to expand out large enough to think about something like much bigger, like a bigger picture just outside of this one lifetime. I think sometimes we can get really lost in that whole thing, and so that's why it can be a deficit. But I think that will come back around. I don't know why that's just like coming into me really strong right now, but I think the ways in which people have usurped their own integrity, their own authenticity, I think it runs very deep for a lot of us. Like, I was even just saying, like, I really consider myself to be somebody who's relatively authentic, who doesn't have a problem stating boundaries or being clear. And I'm really actually becoming acutely aware in the last week or so of, like, over the holidays, for example, having this new experience with my family that I haven't seen in several years in this way, and noticing how I kind of minimize certain elements of my personality, or minimize, and I was really thinking, like, what would it actually take for me to be 100% authentic, 100% in my integrity, and not willing to bend at all, so long as it was hurting another human being?
Yeah.
What would that actually take? And it would, like, actually it would take a lot. Like, and that's crazy, because I really do consider myself to be authentic, and I'm like, we got a lot of work to do. I think a lot of us are not comfortable really radiating and really just expressing and being who we are. I know that's one of the biggest things that comes with clients, is like that expression. I just want to be myself. I just want to be, and what the biggest thing that comes up is, I'm afraid of what people are going to think. I'm afraid of being seen because of the rejection. And that goes right back into, I want to belong, want connection.
Yeah.
I think that primary imprint of separation is what needs to be really dug up by the root, so that we can be informed and move from our own authenticity, and not moving from the fear of what will happen if we do shine really brightly.
I think that this is so on point with, I think, what everyone's experienced in the holidays. And I think also it's been up for review, at least, when I listen to different astrology reports, and I think how it's come up for me too, is just like, for me to shine brightly, it would mean destroying my family, my biological family. My biological family cannot contain, or would not be contain my level. And so actually it would be cruel of me to shine and or force them to even be at my level because they're not ready. So there's been an interesting path for getting okay with letting go of your biological family, like, and not suffering the guilt, and realizing that we're needing to realign, not losing, being authentic and not lose your authenticity. And that's a beautiful, my friend Jasmine, House of the Spirits, her phrase, I have to drag it up, but it's like, the sun doesn't give a fuck about who it blinds.
Yeah.
Like that's, and so right now we're in an age of darkness that capitalizes upon us not shining at blinding levels.
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of why we go back into myth of the gods, and we seek to read the stories, which are actually deposits, or like, of who we really are, to remind ourselves, like, why aren't we Hercules? Why aren't we Thor right now, or Athena, and blinding people, not on purpose, but just because we are who we really are.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting thing, like, you don't actually have to change the world, you just have to shine. And everything will rearrange itself or not rearrange itself. And it's not your concern.
Yeah.
The only thing you're meant to do here is shine. Everything else will take care of itself. There's a beautiful analogy that I love from Shojam Trungpa Rinpoche. He was like, yeah, the bodhisattva just is radiating on their path. Sometimes, and the analogy, bowls of water means people. Sometimes there's bowls of water that reflect the sun. Sometimes there's no bowls of water that reflect the sun. And sometimes there's half bowls with half water that reflect the sun. But that's not the bodhisattva's goal, to get more bowls of water to reflect them. They're either there or they're not. People are either ready or they're not, and that'll sort itself out. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes we're surprised pleasantly.
Right.
Because there's sometimes the story that we have is like you were saying, deposits. Sometimes it's just these really old deposits that aren't even informed by reality right now. Maybe it is. Maybe they would reject you if you were to shine brightly. Maybe you wouldn't belong. And like you said, that would take care of itself, and the reality would rearrange itself accordingly. But in some situations, we might actually be surprised. We might actually invite other people to resonate at that same point of radiation or opulence. We might upset someone and then later push them deeper into themselves. We might be welcomed with open arms and somebody to say, wow, it's so beautiful, I love that. So we don't fucking know. And sometimes we won't know until we actually do it and move with the fear into this new thing.
Yeah, shine everywhere. Just shine everywhere. And like it'll and like you said, it might give someone liberation, or it might give someone tremendous fear. But shine, keep just shining. And this is an interesting thing to kind of talk about power. One of my favorite documentarians, I'll have to list the documentary, but Adam Curtis, the function of power is to tell you a story about the world. Real power is taking the world and shaping it. Previously, again, like I said, it was the power of the church and the state and politics that told you what the story is. Now we get to tell our own. But what we're facing, again, is this radiance issue. We're not claiming enough of our power that's inherent. And yet that which we do not claim is exactly what is creating our reality right now. We're living in a denial of power. We've been trained that power is bad. Look at what we live in.
Wow.
Power is bad. And yet we've got to clean that up and own it, because if we don't own our power, it's utilized against us. But the giant myth in our society is power corrupts, right? There's no show me a myth of great power right now in our modern scenario. We don't have one. We're constantly pummeled by story that power corrupts. and that if you're powerful, you're going to naturally become depraved. You're naturally going to like just have all this scandal,
Right.
right?
And then you hear those, I don't know what the quote is, but it's like that money is not evil. It's that it amplifies whatever is already there.
Uh-huh.
And so power, I think, is very similar. It just amplifies. It will either amplify distortion or it will amplify connection to all. You know, what do we use the power for?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us who are taking power back, or as you so eloquently put it, seeing what that the power is already there, and just, how did you phrase that? It was like,
well, yeah, you're never not powerful. We're just reconfiguring what we've invested in.
the investment piece, right?
Yeah.
Considering what we've invested our energy or power into.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are doing it.
Yeah.
We're the ones taking that opportunity, or taking this opportunity to create a story that we want to be a part of.
Exactly. This is new storytelling. This is new myth building. And this is wild. So I want to actually read this from this other guy. Again, like all these synchronicities came in. This guy on Twitter I follow in the crypto space, Punk6529. And he's quoting in this book, Sapiens by Harari Yuval. His thesis is that so humanity has basically, and again, this whole thing is that we're needing to, if we want liberation, we need to understand who we are, what we are, and where we are, right? We're getting into the mechanics and how the mechanics have been manipulated or forgotten, manipulated, and then what do we do once we reawaken full, like we get our driver's license back, basically, right. To this thing. So in his book, he splits the human experience into the objective, the subjective, and the intersubjective, which means imaginary things that we mutually believe in, story and myth. So his thesis is that the intersubjective is the most important factor in human development because it allows large numbers of people to cooperate. Most theorists believe that pre-societal humans and other great apes can cooperate with only up to 150 people. And they've measured that in like gray matter, like the size of your brain is actually the size of your physical network. And that was shown through migration patterns of different tribes. They reach 150 people and then they would actually splinter off. And then that would also keep the DNA from not getting like intermarried too much. So this limitation seems ballpark correct and is somehow physics and biologically based. Our brains can't spend enough time with enough people to coordinate and synchronize with more than 150 to 200 people. So the question is, how did humans break out of small tribes to come to rule the world? Myths. Abstract stories that progressively larger groups of people can believe in, the intersubjective. Think of these as scaling technology for the human brain. So this is wild. So myths and stories allows splinter groups across a planet to see the same thing and yet not be overwhelmed in their physical way, but globally they share a narrative. But what's wild about myths, some will seem obvious to modern eyes. The gods of Mount Olympus, all-powerful kings and emperors and royalty, organized religion. But myths did not stop in the Middle Ages. They're all around us today. Democracy, human rights, land of the free, home of the brave, family values, tolerance. These are some of our most powerful modern myths. And this is wild. So when you look at, like I said, myth is a destination. Power is an application. So what are we buying into? What are we investing into? And if we realize every thought or every intersubjective thought is an investment into a reality that we're going to live into, well, then it turns out everything you think is a myth. Everything you think is a myth. Even corporations, even what a brand is a narrative that we believe in to make alive. So
right?
we are
That's
literally,
into that.
this is our core code. We
Mm,
are storytellers, myth builders, and then what we're awakening to is that we're in a fabric. We are literally cloaked. We're dripping in myth right now, and now we've got to like be like, wait a second. It's not just one singular myth that we're cloaked in. We've some sort of like the Colonel's secret recipe. We're like in 52 myths or more at any given time. And what is the fabric or the ingredients of our enmeshment of myth right now?
mm.
Yeah.
I would love to hear you name that list again of the,
Mm.
and then maybe we could just talk about some of those briefly.
Yeah. So we understand old myth, right? Gods of Mount Olympus, powerful kings, emperors, royalty, organized religion.
Hmm.
Let's put on the table the myths of New Age.
Okay.
And then the myths did not stop in the Middle Ages. They're all around us today. Democracy, human rights, land of the free, home of the brave,
Let's
family.
do
Yeah.
them one at a time.
Okay. Democracy. Democracy is a myth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody's watching this, I don't know that anybody's watching this who doesn't know that yet, but if you don't, now you
Yeah. Now you do. Now you do. It's really, again, perception equals values. Values equal actions.
It's like marketing. It's like
Completely.
get somebody to buy into it,
Right.
an idea,
Yeah.
a feeling, a
Yep.
concept, but it doesn't necessarily. I mean, I think about a big corporation, like I don't know, McDonald's or something.
Yeah.
What the whole, because it's a whole world that's created around something.
Yeah.
To give it value, like you said, to give it dimension. And then we buy and invest into that myth, not
Yeah.
even really being connected, or I guess in a way being, there's a specific word I'm trying to think, but it's not coming in, like disenfranchised or whatever from the actual like core of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's also maybe like I'm thinking corporations and things like that being almost humanized in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're
Go off track here, but
no, it's important because it's what's the phrase? Attention flow power goes where attention, like, how is that? Yeah, like that's it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I
Yeah.
can't
Attention. If anybody wants to write that down.
Attention flows or
Yeah, right. But that's the truth. It's the truth. And so every story or myth, we're storytellers. So we tell a story about democracy and we then make it real. We perceive, then we value it, and then we act upon it.
And then that becomes the subjective the piece where you and I together, we agree on the reality. And
right.
now we're living in this reality together.
And then we sustain it. It. So now.
With our power, by giving it our power and giving it our currency, our thought currency, our energetic currency.
Exactly. We vote for it. We invest in it every day. And yet what we're waking up to is the plethora of myth that we came pre-assigned into, and going like, I think that's why we're hitting this wall, going like, wait a second, what is the wall we're actually hitting? We're hitting the walls of the stories we've been telling ourselves, and going like, actually, we all want to tell a bunch of new stories. That's what we're really facing. We're sick of the old story, and every time some asshole tries to tell us the old story again, we're pissed off right now. That's what's happening. We don't want to hear government, the story of the all-knowing government, the myth of a government that knows what to do, the myth of a government that has a vision telling us what to do. We're up against that story and going like, I don't want that story anymore. I have a story. I have a remembrance of my sovereignty. That's the myth I'm talking about. Yeah. Which this is interesting, which might not be a myth or a story to tell myself. Sovereignty might be my natural state before all myth, before all storytelling. Right. There is the what is beyond factor that we're also connected to before the human experience of myth and story and living into the material realm of our attentions. you know, but this is creator power. This is the power that we're really waking up to. And we're going like, okay, instead of fighting with the myth, we just dissolve them. This is the expert level. Is like, you just stop in engineering the code.
Yeah.
You know, you press reset and you wipe the canvas clean. That's the most efficient rebellion, is unhook.
Yeah,
You know,
I completely agree. I think that became really, really apparent to me over the last year or two, and just how much fighting against. I mean, because like when I was much younger, I used to want to be like a lawyer or get into the government somehow, and I thought I was going to from the inside. I think most of us are just reaching a point where we're like, oh no, we're just stepping out of that. Those structures are going to either continue doing whatever they're doing, but they're dissolving from our individual fields and collectively with those of us who are stepping out of that. Like I think about the 9-to-5 job.
Yep.
And how in some ways it's kind of amazing to me, because in a lot of ways, everything that's happening, humanity has been asking for. Mm-hmm. And so in a lot of ways, everything that's been going on has sort of pushed people or forced people into certain choice points, or it's forced people into maybe doing something that they were just like waiting around to do. And it's gotten to the point where, I mean, there's no, at least in the US right now, there's a shortage of jobs, so to speak. There's openings everywhere, but nobody fucking wants them because we don't want to do that anymore. And that in of itself is its own transition of like, I don't want to give my energy, time, and currency, my own power or energy currency, to something that's feeding collapse. And so people are pulling their energy out of that 9-to-5, out of whether that's the governmental matrix of Democrat versus Republican, or the 9-to-5 matrix of you. Like I recently started seeing people, they were phrasing it like, instead of, because the old kind of slavery model is that you sell your labor for money. Mm-hmm. And even though, I mean, you could still technically say that that's kind of what's happening no matter what you're doing, but we're moving away from that and more into like equal exchange of actually feeling like we're valued for actually enjoying, that's a fucking concept, actually enjoying what we're doing instead of living to work and working to live. And that's a big, I just want to say very briefly, I think for a lot of people that are going through like career transitions and stuff, there can be a lot of shame brought up because so much of our worth has been tied in, and that's also part of that conditioning and that programming that we're really breaking through, is that our worth is so tied to productivity, to doing, to what we create. And I think we're changing that story too. And just saying like, that she's so woke. Oh my God.
I don't know what the fuck is going on in the comments.
Oh my God, what is going on?
I don't know if that's like a bot or something. I'm just going to block, if you can block that person. Because I'm like,
block them from, oh wait, here we go, block. Oh,
I don't know what the hell that is. Yeah.
Self-worth is, I don't know either. Let's ignore that. Okay. But yeah, we're breaking free from that story because we remember beyond, like what you were talking about, beyond the programming, beyond the myth, pre all of that, what's at the core, what's left. And I think what's left is quite simple, actually. But I was headed somewhere with that, and then I got distracted.
Well, you know what's hilarious? Nothing's by coincidence. You know what they've been calling that with the job that people leaving the jobs? It's called the Great Resignation.
Oh, really?
That's the news cycle term that they've been saying it, the Great Resignation. But look at that. We're resigning. We're fucking resigning from the preordained reality that was handed to us across multiple levels, not just the 9-to-5. But yeah, and so that is, I think that's pretty funny that they've been calling that. And so now You've got people who are seeking all sorts of levels of freedom: financial freedom, time freedom, family freedom. Like all these levels of freedom are coming on board. And now we're collectively engineering an infrastructure that is here to not just prop up the individual, but prop up the new myth. We're building new myths around financial freedom right now and time freedom. So here we are. That's the beautiful thing. We're all coders. We're all programmers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And meaning, like you said, we can rewrite the faulty code, the code that, like, how did this get in here? Where's the virus protection for this shit?
Well, it's very slow code. I think if I go computer, like our CPU, like we got new chipsets, we got new CPUs, we're just like, we need code that's as fast as we always have been. I've always been told my whole life, you're impatient. I'm like, no, I'm so done running the slow code. Like, we're fast. Actually, we create the correct environment. We're very quick. And this is the beauty of what we're now awakening to, is this, that the cult of the celebrating the individual is also part of the old myth. Again, because it's the priest or the king or the president or the Hollywood actor or actress, right? Like the pinnacle. And it's like, no, that's vertical. That's
the triangle.
The pyramid pinnacle. It's the apex. And it's just like, no, we're getting distributed. We're getting horizontal. We're getting evenly distributed with equality, and going like, yo, we go like this together. We are going like this together, or we're going up like this together. So we install these new myths, the new code, and we're here. And like it's interesting in the kind of crypto scene, and people launching projects, one of the number one things they're pounding is community, community, community. Like, this has to have equity. This has to have back and forth. And we're actually entering a new economic model where in the near future, which is pretty much now, not only will you buy something, but over time you're actually paid back for buying that product. And it's wild what's happening. It's like, essentially, I think we'll still have back and forth monetarily, but in your bank account number, it'll be like you spent nothing over time. It'll be like you spent nothing. And it's so wild where we're headed with this right now. Wow. And we're in the transition of that today. It started all 2021. Yeah. And in the next 5 years, you're going to be like, wow, you could buy a pair of shoes and then join that community, and it's going to be sold to you as an NFT, which is a piece of investment that you can trade back. And if the brand rises, or the collective or the community rises in value, and this is interesting, providing value, then you can actually sell that NFT and be pretty much paid back the same amount, or if not more, as you initially bought the shoes for.
Wow.
It's so wild. And so we're becoming a global culture of investors.
Yeah. And this is something we're going to have to learn about. Yeah. And I think for some people, it comes natural. There's certain pieces of, whether it's like financial freedom or time freedom or family freedom and all those things you were naming.
Yeah.
I think different people are going to have strengths, or it's going to be easy for them or they have a natural desire to learn about certain things versus others. And we're going to have to kind of come together and learn about this stuff and have patience with ourselves a little bit, because we are running these higher level codes and things are moving a little bit faster. Yeah. But like I was saying before, it's also new in a way. Like I keep imagining looking back at this in 20 years and thinking, like, the amount of innovation and adaptability and flexibility that you have to have right now. Like, the more adaptable, flexible you can be, the more resilient that things are going to be, because things are changing so quickly. You kind of have to, I try not to overwhelm myself by being oversaturated with information, but just kind of slowly chipping away at it. And that's kind of what we have to do. But I also wanted to say one other thing, not to carry it too far off in another direction, because I don't know if you were finished with that thought.
I kind of am. Yeah, go for it.
Was the piece about how you're describing, you know, it's like we got new, I'm not great with computers, but the things you named, the chip, the hardware, the whatever,
right.
all this stuff is new. The difference, just I have to fucking name it in this live, but the difference between that organic evolution, that organic reclamation or rehabilitation of our multidimensionality and all the things that come with that, inherent abilities, telepathy, visions, you know, whatever it is, however that shows up for people, and how that in so many ways, and I really hope this is clear with people, is in direct contrast to this artificial walking into transhumanism or hybridization with artificial intelligence as a way of saying, this is how we're going to be able to expand into our true cosmicness. Like, this is the way that humans evolve. And I think because many of us have literal experience with seeing that we do not have to be one with a computer to know that we are the technology. We are the technology. Our body is the technology. We have all the technology that we need. Reinstalling completely new structures internally. And that evolution is so much more powerful than, I'm not downplaying, I'm not saying, oh, technology is horrible. It's like, I think it has a place, but I don't think it has a place in the human body in that way.
Well,
I have no interest in that.
Right.
It's already happening, you know, like we've already, our nervous systems in a way have already kind of blended with the phone, with the different things. And that's part of what has to be navigated. But I guess what I'm saying is, just to fucking throw it out here in this video, I don't think I want to go any farther with that. I have no interest in going any farther with that. And it'll be very interesting to see in the coming years, like, you know, I think about metaverse, and I think about how, what do they call it? Virtual reality, and then altered reality, and how that's gonna impact the way that people interact with each other. And it'll be interesting to see people who choose to go into that world and people who don't, and people who choose to, because I know some people who plan to go into those worlds, but what they plan to do is to pull energy, resources, and money from the inorganic timelines into the organic timelines. So there's people who are going to have, I think, missions or contracts to actually work within the technology itself to start rearranging from the inside. I think there's some people who are going to just go out completely, and then there's some people that might just completely get merged, and we don't know what that's going to look like. But yeah, why don't you throw that out there?
Well, to bring it full circle, let's just say it like this: technology is a myth. Technology is a story we tell about ourselves. So if we see technology as a mirror of our potential, a mirror of our capabilities, then do we hold on to the book called technology, or do we get reminded about who we are? Technology is a myth. We get reminded about our power and our capability, our power to network, our power to expand, our power to teleport, our power to have telekinesis, our power to have third eye transmissions, our power to be anywhere in the world as anybody. These are these new myths. I mean, it's pretty wild. You know, yeah. So again, like you said, like, okay, so, you know, I said this, came with this phrase long ago. Third dimensional technology is a crutch for a fifth dimensional reality, or six, or whatever number, what you want to put on that. But understanding we're making tools that are extensions of what we naturally are. So what are we naturally? Power. We're power. So power can be applied in an infinite amount of ways. So right now we're using these tools, and we're awakening something about us. And so often, I think, like, Gary Vaynerchuk is great at saying, it's like, social media didn't corrupt us, it exposed us. It exposed us. We were doing it anyway, but we were isolated and it couldn't be shared or seen. We were doing it anyway. So anything that people say, yeah, there's obsessive angles to, say, social media and its presentation, but weren't we doing that already? Weren't we idolizing the Hollywood star, and then everyone became a Hollywood star, and then we complained about it?
Mm-hmm.
But it just exposed that everyone wanted to be the Hollywood star anyway. So it didn't corrupt us, it exposed us. And now we're examining 10 years later. It's been like last 10 years has really been that boom. 15 years, if you're thinking like MySpace era to now. Okay, now we're going like, yeah, this is okay. The party's a little bit over now. Like, we're exhausted. Like, we have fatigue from this. We played it out. We played it out. Everyone got their 15 minutes of fame. We played it out. Now what's next? Oh, okay, turns out we have responsibility here as creators of what's next. You're either going to be a victim of what's next, or you're going to be a creator of what's next. And right now we're exposing also that, again, the old institutions have no vision, have no new myth. They have no new narrative.
No new narrative.
Yeah. They want to give you yesterday. Yesterday is very conservative. To keep living in a realm where you get yesterday is actually the essence of conservatism. And where we find ourselves in the political mindscape of fuckery is that it's actually the liberal class that is the most conservative right now, because they need government to sustain their reality. It's wild. It's a weird ass contradiction that we're facing right now. And it's like, yo, we got to just drop it all and take our power and reapply it to a new myth. So this is our responsibility. What are the new myths?
There was one thing that you said right at the beginning of when you started talking that was like, really love the way that you phrased that, because it was very empowering. And it was about the technology and how it's just exposed what it is that's already there.
Yeah.
I think for myself, and maybe for anybody watching this, something that I'm taking away, at least from this conversation, is the capacity that we have to reframe things, and how in reframing them, it completely changes the energy or the relationship that we have to that thing. Yeah. So like with the example of the technology piece, and saying, I could sort of just be like, oh, I'm addicted to it now, and it did all these bad things, and technology is corrosive. But if I move into the lens of this is exposing, just the same way that we could say any kind of force, any kind of external force that's put on us that makes us feel or realize something that feels uncomfortable or negative, doesn't necessarily mean to focus on that external force, which is putting that pressure on, but just, that the power is, well, what is it exposing? And so whether that's a dysfunctional family that exposed something in you that, and maybe they fucking were part of creating it, but the point is that even if something external is a part of creating something that's dysfunctional, it's still highlighting or illuminating what is. And it's in that place of reality of what is being illuminated, that we have the access of power.
Yeah.
And I think that's always going to be a way more resilient, I guess, approach to take, is to reframe things as to what is this showing me and what do I want to do with this? And that's something I focused on in some of my teachings too, is like data, taking in data, learning to take in data in a more neutral way. I think inherently we take in data through a very subjective lens, through our experience, through whatever kind of, distorted lens we have on top of reality. And the more that we kind of clear out that gunk, the easier it is for us to see information, see things coming in as objective information that we can now do something with. Whether somebody doesn't like me and now I have to make a choice based on the fact that this person doesn't like me anymore, and that's
Mm,
some information. Probably doesn't feel very good, but it's still information that we can use.
yeah. Again, the theme of reclaiming power and also healing the group hijack that there's only one narrative. Again, we're when we talk about multidimensionality, we're talking about, or we talk about the metaverse or infinite universes, a phrase I came up with, I'm calling it the mythoverse. Like instead of the universe, the uni one, we're coming into the multi-mythoverse.
Mm.
And this is our true destiny and diversity here. So what we're breaking away from, because you see the war going on the Twitter or the news, like it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way, it's got to be this way. Well, people who are fighting are still in the paradigm that there's only a singular reality to fight for. Is one reality, someone's got to win in it. When there's infinite reality where everyone can win in it. Choose your own adventure, choose your multi-mythoverse, choose your path.
Yeah.
Choose your, I hate to say individuality, but choose your truth, choose your authenticity, and then what aligns. And it doesn't matter what anybody else has done. So there's this weird, monotheism that we're breaking out of. And this is like, what's the world going to look like when we're no longer even fighting for the myth of a country called United States, or we're fighting for the myth of a country called England or Canada, or like South Africa, whatever. Those are myths too. Every country is a myth. So if we're no longer fighting for dominance over myths,
For the one way.
for the one way, exactly. It's a falsehood. That's an old paradigm that, again, that's part of the old paradigm that we're moving away from, that there's only one way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that expanded capacity, I think, to share, because that's the biggest fucking problem. Have is people living in parallel realities and having no clue how to bridge parallel realities. Our ego gets very attached to our subjective reality. And we tend to cluster in group and try to belong with other people who see within that same reality, which is valid.
Yeah.
But that's our healing as human beings, is going to be, how do we learn to accommodate or expand ourselves enough to accommodate for another parallel reality, so long as that parallel reality is not harming. And that's the piece where it starts to get really muddy, because everybody has a different idea about what harm is. And if you're looking at it from one angle versus another angle, you could be seeing two very different pictures. And so learning to also kind of break down these subjective realities and to start to see, I don't know, like that's how we're going to have to act with other people. We're going to have to be, and I think there's a level where the reality splits are so extremely polarized that they actually can't even fit. You can't even see each other.
Right.
You won't even energetically cross. You might be existing in the same physical space, but there will be no interaction from those two, like different, literally like different dimensions of seeing and interacting with reality. So I think I don't even have the answer to that. I mean, I don't have the answer for what that's going to be like, but that'll be really important, is having our egos be less attached to our subjective reality, being willing to have conversations with people and have conversations about harm and what that means, because that's where that's where it becomes a problem, because it's like, well, I want to have my subjective reality and you want to have yours, but what if your reality is infringing on mine and now you're harming me? And so now you're taking away from my sovereignty by having your reality. And it's like,
Well, like kind of when you were just talking, we have to check our assumptions.
Yeah.
So when you talk to another being, you have to actually inquire, what myths are your foundation? Because if we have different mythological foundations or story foundations or perception foundations, then we're like, there's no point in having the conversation. We're trying to argue the other person into our reality or vice versa. So we actually need to expose all the fundamental myths that we treat as our core perception of reality. And then kind of like put them on display so that people know what myth angle you're coming from, for perception, value, action level. Because again, like if I'm just assuming you believe in democracy, but you're a communist, like, or not, I don't think you are, but you know what I mean? But again, we just walk up to people assuming they believe in the same thing we do. That's the falsehood of the modern era in some ways. Or the cohesion of the modern era. We all believe in the modern era. And in the modern era, nobody exposes the myth that there's this thing called the modern era. And yet we all sustain it. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of exposure, and of what's going on. I wrote the myths are the genetic code of cultures. And if we want a new earth culture or any other sort of culture, we need a new myth that we all share in. And we have to examine what's the fastest way to distribute this new myth we ignite about ourselves. And I think part of the challenge right now, as Seth Godin would put in the Icarus Deception, is if myths are art, then we're tasked with making better art right now. We're tasked with being more empowered creators that, again, take the current narrative and say, you know what, the narrative that we're in is a box. And either I'm going to sustain that box or I'm going to drop the box altogether and be a better artist of reality.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. I want to read some of these.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. I'm so ready for countries and borders or passports to be over.
Yep.
Who wants to talk off this chat about what a world with no countries would be like? Gone are the days of the savior, including our desire to save others and lead them down our chosen path. Yeah, that's really huge. Let's see, communism in its original essence was kind and sharing. Democracy has become a non-democracy lately. I'm all over all the labels. I would probably say, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but I would say democracy has been non-democracy for a long time. I don't know if you have anything to say about communism essence.
I think I'll say this about communism is that I think I agree. The original code, the idea of it is very, like, as they say, they came from the utopians, utopian movement. When we look at history for examples of how it's gone down, we would say it's pretty fucked.
You say it didn't really go.
It didn't go according to plan. But what I'm getting at is we have to separate communism from collective power, and this is what I'm getting at. Collective power has been warped into the concept of communism in our modern eras in some ways, and what we need to do is pull them apart. Because when we live in a culture that celebrates only the individual, then we are powerless to collectivize and be a force of nature. So when I say collective power, let's go primal. We needed to act as a singular mind in order to hunt a woolly mammoth. It took great coordination of an entire tribal unit, an extended family unit, that was founded on the same myth. These extended family units of our tribal era or hunter-gatherer era were founded upon myths. And that's their cohesion that held the tribe together, was actually the shared perception of reality, the shared myth. And that shared myth allowed them to act in concert with one another, which created synergistic opportunities and potential and agility. Like, they're a crazy shit. We see it in like different group sports. There's crazy shit we pull off as humans when we are a collective under a united vision or myth. We do wild stuff. That's amazing. We've got to reclaim that art and that power of what it means to feel okay being part of a collective. You're still an individual. You're still who you are with your unique talents, perspectives, gifts, and yet you belong to something that has a cohesion that grants you access to a power that is actually a natural state that we've denied of who we really are. This is my friend Jasmine again, House of the Spirits. The individual suffers when they're no longer part of a group. An individual cannot be the pinnacle of what it means to be an individual if they do not belong to a group.
Right.
You know, and the truth is we're never not collaborating with nature, which is a group experience, a collective experience. So, but we're fragmented in our mind, and thus having all the mind problems of someone who is disconnected to what they naturally are. And what we're naturally a family. Yes. We're naturally the family of existence. And that's what I'm most excited about the Aquarian age, to give that title, is what the hell can we do in our natural state as a group that we've forgotten and need to reclaim? What is the kind of tool? What art does the tool of a collective or a family make? And to reclaim that power is, I think, the greatest thing we've got to go forward on. What is a collective, family, or group, or tribe, or brand? If you want to give that title, what is a collective brand in this new paradigm of blockchain and equity? What's our collective? I don't know why I keep thinking of a boomerang or something, but I don't know. There's some sort of, it's so fucked up that I can't give an example because we've forgotten. And this is what we've got to reclaim and step back into. In the Aquarian age is the foundation of this, is the arena in which you're gonna, again, heal this weird inception that collectivism is bad. And we have the bad examples. We got to pull that out and be like, yo, we get that communist thing was nuts. But our power to be guided by a new myth, which means a shared vision, retaining our individuality, but participating in a new shared myth and vision, and the collective power and outcome of participating in that.
Yeah. There was something, just to add something to that.
Yeah.
I think this is what we see at an individual level with a split in people between desperate for other people and fearful and pushing other people away.
Yeah.
Kind of, it trickles down individual in the work that we're doing and learning how to have ourselves and other people. That's the rehabilitation of relationships. And that is the rehabilitation of a collective of people, you know, like collective consciousness or small groups, tribes, whatever. Yeah, I think it comes down to working with those internal polarities so that as individuals, we're comfortable with having ourselves, just to kind of go back to what we were saying earlier, having our own authenticity, feeling comfortable radiating, being in our own energy. All of that's very like 4-year-old kind of developmental stuff where we like learn like our boundaries and what I am and no to this and yes to this and here's where I end and you begin.
Right. And
rehabilitating that so that we can have new experiences in group, in relationship that are not informed, it's going to be informed, but like that don't reflect the old trauma that we've experienced as a collective, because there's so much betrayal there's so much separation, disconnection, and betrayal, I think, amongst people. And that's what I think we're seeing is a lot of the division tactics are just showing us what's already there, these really core things that we have to resolve so that we can move into that I can have me and I can have you and I can have this other person. And it doesn't diminish me. It doesn't diminish you. We can learn how to have a synergistic, collective energy and what comes out of that, because that's really sovereign beings making up a collective. And when you have that, you have basically one giant sovereign collective.
Yep.
And what kind of art can come out of that?
And guess what is already a giant sovereign collective?
What?
Your fucking body.
Yeah.
You've got at a minimum something like 1 trillion different sovereign cells, beings, entities, bacteria inside of you, right? Each one of us right now is the proof of statement of what trillions of sovereign energies coming together to create a cohesive vision.
And think about too the relationship that people have with this collective.
Exactly.
Not all the parts are talking to each other. Sometimes we've got the liver doing things and the heart's doing something else, and sometimes in a system that's healthy, all of those things are working exactly the way that they are. Those defined. They don't have to be the same. The heart doesn't have to be the same as the mind. Doesn't have to be the same as the stomach. They carry out their unique roles. And I think that's also kind of what we would see in a sovereign society would be people finding, like if you think about the car analogy and everybody's a different part of the car, we tend to really value the engine. Everybody wants an engine, but if you don't have any fucking wheels, you're not going anywhere. So we have to just finding what we're really good at, what we love, and being that part of the car or being that part of the body, the collective body that moves forward.
Yeah. And this comes from Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's like, the inside is always mirrored on the outside. So our current structure of civilization is a mirror of our internal organization. Yeah. They're one and the same. It's a transparent mirror. So like you said, like, well, shit, if your personal internal organs are not talking to one another or they're fighting, well, look at our world. Yeah. It's the same thing. The collective outward biology is the same as the collective inward biology. And so that's where we're like, wow, we're really out of rhythm with what is natural to us. And I would say that it's because the adherence to myths that has led us to a destination. Myth is a destination, a genetic code of a culture. Well, we've hit the end of what this code can deliver, and we're actually suffering now. So we have to drop it.
So this is actually also, it's so interesting how like you say something and then I can like relate it back to this like trauma recovery or internal part stuff, is that this is exactly what happens internally because we develop some kind of a strategy to cope with something that doesn't work or something that's harmful in some way. And then for a while, which we could call that like the code or the myth that we're buying into, for a while that works until it doesn't work. And then it creates a new vulnerability and other parts of the system start to break down because that strategy that was used was never really designed to be used long term. Yeah. It's supposed to be used as like information that we then do something with. It's like, oh, okay. It's kind of like a holding place in the body. Like, if something, like, let me think of an example, like somebody having an internal part that doesn't like people, like that might really serve you short term as like a placeholder until you can get somewhere safe around safer people, but eventually eventually that thing that was once helping us turns into that which is harming us. And so we have to rewrite that story. Yeah.
We're sustaining the myth of don't quit. That this version of civilization is the only thing we have. We're in this current version of we're addicts to the myth of sustaining this version of civilization, and people are again fighting for their limitations or having the most ultimate Stockholm syndrome, like and fighting for the sustaining of something that's killing us.
Yeah.
And modern medicine even will admit it, like 80% of current diseases are a byproduct of the organization of our civilization. 80%. We didn't have all the shit we're suffering from, not me, not you, but that people suffer from, see the TV ads for.
Yeah.
That didn't exist 100 years ago. 80% of the pills that the shit that they're trying to solve right now, those diseases or sufferings did not exist 100 years ago.
Yeah.
They're fucking brand new. They're a byproduct of the sustaining of a civilization that we've been told we can't quit, which is a myth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And just like with the internal world, we get to go in and say, okay, this is something that allowed me to, maybe not even allowed us, maybe allowed someone to benefit at some point from this thing.
Right.
And now it's no longer benefiting. And so we have to rebalance the energies just like we would internally and take care of certain vulnerabilities within our environment, things that are vulnerable and weak spots that need to be re-strengthened.
Yeah.
So bringing in energies that are missing and maybe disintegrating things that no longer need to be there.
Yeah, it's the mastery over our environment. And again, this is about true power is the ability
for the self, and mastery over the environment is mastery over the self.
Well, true power, again, being the ability to shape the world rather than being shaped by a world that was handed to you. and thus the new environment that we shape is biologically compatible for upliftment, longevity, and flourishing and collaboration. I actually need to bounce.
This is good. This feels like a nice.
Yeah,
and what a good way to end too with that last piece.
Yeah.
If you could just say it one more time, because I think it's so to be shaped. I know it came out. It was probably. I'll say it again.
Yeah.
To be the ones shaping journal instead of being shaped by it. To realize we have been shaped, and now we're becoming the artists. We're becoming the shapers.
Yeah, and then so we end our conforming and contorting, and shine. And feel okay with blinding the world with our authenticity.
Blind them all. I can't wait.
I know, blind them all.
I'm going to be shining up my surface here so I can shine like the sun. So thank you so much for being here and having this. I don't even know how long this was. It was
hour and a half.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. We just rocked an hour and a half.
Okay, I hope it saved. So thank you guys.
Yeah, please save, and I'd love to repost it. And I love you so much, Rowan, and thank you. This has been brilliant. Thank you so much, and everyone here. So awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys. Blessings to everybody. Be well, and I'll see you around.
Okay, lots of love.
Bye.